stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dessler here. Childer here. Collins here. McGrath here. Sullivan. Owen here.
Okay, we will start with our favorite agenda, our favorite item, 207's best, and I believe we're going to start with Mr. Messmer.
Yes.
Okay.
So I would like to introduce Sam Tenaglia. Sam, if you would stand. He's Maine South 207's best for elected area experts. So it might surprise you that Sam is one of the most well-known students at Maine South. And that's a little surprising because he's also one of the quietest, humblest students walking the halls at Maine South. But if it has to do with broadcasting, Sam is involved. For the entire 4 years of his high school career, Sam has pretty much been, in some way, shape, or form, the face, the voice, the behind-the-scenes cameraman of all things WMTH. So he has broadcasted plays, performances, athletic events, and quite frankly, he put us on the map this year. Our athletic director will tell you that his phone was blowing up when we were doing our very first high school game day. And athletic directors were picking this up, I think it was out on the Cube, and just, texting RAD, oh my gosh, what's going on over at Maine South, I can't believe it, it's so cool. And Sam was one of the leaders of making that happen. So he's left his mark here. He's won a few awards around this as well. He's a writer for Southwards, and so he's received honors from the National Scholastic Press Association, the Midwest Media Educators Association, and placed second at the Midwest Media Association Video Festival in comic narrative, and I have not seen this, but I probably should, for his short film entitled MS Hall Monitors. So I'm sure that's very good. I'm sure it's one of the things you might not know about Sam, Sam has struggled a little bit with some health issues over time. And one of the things that Mr. Stavakis, who works with him, picked out and sent to me, which I think is telling about Sam, is something he wrote. Now, Sam is a 5-time survivor of leukemia. And he also actually wrote something when he was out because he suffered from a virus. But it's interesting what he wrote. After being out of school for so long, I realized just how much I took for granted and how much I miss it. Specifically friends, teachers, favorite subjects, and intellectual stimulation. Some students don't think much about how much they are getting out of school by going every day. It was only after an extended absence that I realized how much school really matters. What some see as a dull day of school on a Tuesday, I see as a blessing, the opportunity to learn alongside friends. I know Sam well enough to know that that is truly heartfelt, and that if you know Sam, you love the guy. He's hard not to like, and he's so supportive of the people he works with, and people want to work with him. Whether that's in Southwards and in the in our little cubby hole of a newsroom where you guys put the paper together, or whether it's down in the TV studios or out among any of our venues, people love working with Sam because Sam is one of the kindest, most giving individuals you're ever going to meet. I'm going to let Mr. Strom sum it up, so I'm going to read what he wrote. Probably knows Sam the best, and if you know Sam at all, this will all ring very true to you. When I think of Sam Tenaglia, I think of strength and passion. Mr. Tenaglia has spent the greater part of his young life battling cancer. Although at times it has slowed him down, he has never once let it discourage him from pursuing his goals. He's a survivor through and through. In fact, you could spend an entire week with Sam and you would never once know of the battle raging on in his body. He has never allowed cancer to define him like it so easily can. He has never made it an excuse or ever used cancer as a crutch to slow him down. In fact, he's used it as motivation to never give up and to truly live each and every day to its fullest. He's one of the most optimistic young men you will ever meet. He lives his life in a manner uncommon to most people his age. He doesn't just see the people and places right in front of him, he can see the big picture. He has made himself a certain staple in my class and has become a leader in WMTH based on his hard work, his creativity, and his constantly upbeat attitude. He has found his passion in being the voice behind Maine South football. He sets up live interviews with the athletes before and after games. He tirelessly memorizes stats of every player and coach on either team on any given game day. He ensures he is ready for every game by checking his notes and making sure his team is on the same page with him. He strives to make every Friday night his best in front of the camera. He is a very infectious personality, and when he starts to talk, he's incredibly captivating. It is because of all the passion built up inside of him. He is generous and gracious. If he makes a mistake, he figures it out and works hard to correct the problem. Mr. Tenaglia is passion. Passion for life, for sports, for his family, and his friends. Passion radiates out of his pores. He loves building relationships and being the person his classmates can count on for anything. That's Sam Tenaglia. And he gets all A's in broadcasting and in the newspaper too, just to, throw on top. So Sam, what do you, who's with you tonight, and what are you thinking about for next year?
Oh, well, I'm here with my dad and my mom, and I'm thinking about doing journalism, or going into journalism at U of I, so.
Excellent.
Sam, come on up, we've got a couple of parties for you here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Best of luck to you.
Okay, we'll move on to Maine East.
Hi, everybody. I am pleased to introduce Danish Nawab. So, Danish is going to come up with a theme, but basically we're thinking about the convergence of many electives and how they can play a role in helping a student find their passions. And really, I think Danish is sort of a case study in a lot of what we're thinking about as we look to be more innovative in terms of the learning experiences we provide for students based on the way our school day is built and the way you go about acquiring knowledge, learning knowledge, gaining experience so that we can say you're ready to graduate from high school. So if you went back and you took a look at what Danish has done here, he's been consistently, since he started as a freshman, enrolled in accelerated classes and had a fair number of AP courses that he's been enrolled in last year, this year. You also would see that he's had a number of electives. He's been in German 1 and 2. He has been involved in AP Psych, AP Stats, and AP Macro-Microeconomics. He's had 4 years of Project Lead the Way. So as a freshman, he was an intro to engineering design. As a sophomore, civil engineering and architecture. As a junior, computer integrated manufacturing. And this year, he's in principles of engineering. He's also participating in South Asian Club, Investment Club, and he's been active for 2 years in Skills USA, where he's competed at the state level in architecture design. So in this relationship, you start to hear engineering, architecture, and hear a little bit about business and actually a fair amount of entrepreneurship as well. So Becky Stewart, who 4 years ago was still a full-time teacher, she's now one of our CTE district department chairs, had Danish as a freshman in Project Lead the Way. And had a chance, she recalls telling the students about, quote, this cool internship opportunity the senior had just experienced. Basically told the students, this is something you want to do when you get to be 16 or older. Come back around, there's some good things happening. So we were sort of on starting the ascent of career pathways and internships and a lot of the good work we're doing right now. So the next year, Danish was in civil engineering and architecture with Tom Kaiser. And Tom shared with me, he said, Danish was an excellent student in civil engineering and architecture because of his passion for the subject and desire to study this career after college. Tom put him in touch with Chapman Design Architecture, local firm. Kids went through the mains and they've been very supportive of our students. Chapman, Design and Architecture. For an internship, and we began working with him in January of his sophomore year as one of the youngest internship students that we've ever placed. At Chipman, he started there by making copies and generally helping in the office. Quickly progressed based on his CAD skills, drafting to look at plans. Soon thereafter, they started to assign him to work on projects. So he's worked on some Chick-fil-A restaurant projects and some other things based in California. he now has a new title of equity analyst with Chipman. Business card, title, he's named, he has his own phone number, he's able to get in touch with him through the website. He's still a senior in high school. Chipman has 4 offices, got California, was it East Coast?
Yeah, New York, California, one in Uganda, and then one in Chicago.
So he is actually now sort of working virtually with clients in all of those offices. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that. So Tom also just said he's pretty awesome, very proud of him. So Becky Stewart basically said a few days ago, maybe 3 weeks or so ago, said this is where the story becomes interesting. So Becky saw Danish, senior, a few days ago in the hallway, and he said, Mr. Kaiser told me to give you one of these, handed her this business card from Chipman, and as I said, listed his name, titles, so on and so forth. So Becky said, congratulations, and said, well, tell me a little bit more. Becky said, this is what Danish shared in terms of story. He said he was sitting in the lunchroom at Chipman designing his computer out when the son of the owner comes up behind him, and Danish initially thinks he's going to be in trouble for being on his computer. When he's asked what he's doing, Danish replies that he's looking at his stock portfolio to see if he needs to make any adjustments. So, as an aside, Danish is currently enrolled in AP macro-micro economics, and is learning about the market, how to use data to spot trends. The owner's son asked Danish how reviewing his portfolio related to the world of architecture. Danish replied that if they use the analytics of companies to measure growth, Chipman may be able to begin discussions or create relationships so that when the growing companies are ready, they have an architecture firm also at the ready. He was not in trouble. The owner was intrigued enough by his response that he asked him to do some research on company time. Long story short, he's now the equity analyst for Chipman Designs, and again, told you a little bit about that. Another aspect of his story is that he's basically in the early stages of starting his own business. He's got a company that is dedicated to helping make investing easy. He currently has 40 customers, nearly all of them non-paying right now, but currently he's applied with the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority to take exams in the Series 63 license, which is the Uniform Securities Agent license required by each state authorizing licensees to transact business within the state, and his Series 65 license required by anyone intending to provide any kind of financial advice or service on a non-commissioned basis. He's studying on his own to prepare for these exams, and hopes to be able to sit for the test within the next 3 months or so. And this would allow him to grow his company for profit. So I had a chance, I've kind of seen him around the hallways, but I didn't know him well, so I sat with him a few days ago. Said, well, this is kind of cool. He said, it sounds like in some regards the way we do school kind of has gotten in his way. I said, well, yeah, maybe a little bit. But again, if all of his teachers, while feeling like he may be occupied with things outside of school, he's in class, he's very intelligent, he's very positive, good things to say about him. We said, well, how would you do school differently? He said, well, I probably would do maybe half of the kind of the traditional teaching. He said, you got to do that. I mean, he's not thinking that goes away. But a little more, about half of it sort of based on inquiry. And his exact quote was, if he had a perfect place for him, he said, I would be stoked if I could go into a class, have a longer period of time, and have a teacher talk to me about architecture, finance and business, and astronomy, because those are 3 things I really like. So, he's had some ability to kind of get into that a little bit. So I think, clearly he has taken advantage of some opportunities that have come to him through 207, but he's leveraged those and he's taken the ball and run with it. He's hardworking, he's got initiative. I've asked that he remember his friends in Maine when he is successful in a world right now. I think he's, when he was thinking about architecture initially, he's thinking now maybe real estate development, because he can kind of merge passions of architecture, engineering, and business that he's got right now. So I think we'll hear pretty cool things from him as we stay in touch, and proud of him and his accomplishments. So congratulations.
So I brought my mom and I brought my dad, both of them really hardworking people that supported me a lot. So
Great. And what are your plans next year?
UC Berkeley for real estate development. That
Okay.
finance program.
Congrats.
Name rest, Audrey?
Yes, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Margarita Patino. Margarita's name came up from a variety of academic areas at Maine West when we asked for nominations. But where she excels the most has been in foreign language, where they hands down said Margarita is an unbelievable student in the Spanish language, and she's quite fluent and in both speaking and writing. And the way that it was explained to me was very often they get students who can speak incredibly well and listen incredibly well, communicate that way, but very rarely do they get a student who can write so eloquently in the Spanish language and also in the English language the way Margarita can. And almost every teacher, well, every single teacher who described Margarita started with, Margarita's very quiet. But it was always followed with, but brilliant, or, but when she talks, people listen, because she doesn't talk often, but when she does, she makes sure she's heard, and it's always something important. So I just want to share some of the things that Margarita has done at Maine West. She carries a 4.35 GPA in our toughest classes, including all of those foreign language classes. She's in Spanish 5 AP right now and acing that with no problem. She has been inducted into the Spanish National Honor Society and is part of all of the activities that they do there as well. Mr. Galanis, who's her current Spanish 5 AP teacher, says Margarita is a quiet leader who leads by example. I'm happy to have her in my class as she possesses laudable characteristics as a student and as a person. And I think that your social science teacher said it the best. She said, Margarita is an amazing thinker. She's quiet, but she's certainly not silent, which means she might be quiet in group work, but when it's really important, she makes sure her voice is heard. She's best expressing her thoughts in writing. She has the ability to see a situation from multiple perspectives, showing a high degree of empathy. This gives her insight into the world in which she lives and contributes. Thoughtful in all her contributions, she also has the ability to critically think, posing questions that push others toward exploring each topic to its fullest. She's an impeccable student, and she puts 100% into everything. Mr. Howenstein says he hopes that his kids have your qualities as they grow older, because you are so deliberate in your pursuit of understanding the curriculum. You're such a kind person, and he really hopes that those qualities are something that his own children have. And Dr. Papa George wrote a huge long paragraph about you. I'm going to paraphrase some of the things he said. He went on and on about your research paper in his class, and he said she has the written storytelling ability of a novelist. In my class, she wrote convincingly about the status of gender and machismo in Mexican-American culture as she wove research together with her own narration in order to explore a complex, layered topic. He said it was among the best papers he has ever read, and he teaches research all the time. Her research project was quite memorable and interesting and original. So Margarita obviously is shy and quiet, and when teachers talk about her, they even lower their voice and say, oh, Margarita, she's quiet. And I found myself doing the same thing in my office when I was speaking with Margarita, but she's so compelling and so talented. We are very fortunate to have her at Maine West and to honor her as 207's best. So congratulations. So tell us who's with you tonight, and then tell us what your plans are next year.
So I'm here with my parents and my brother, and next year I'm thinking about going to Illinois Wesleyan or Beloit
To do what?
to study anthropology and writing.
Congratulations. Best of luck to you. I'm very proud
Okay, we that the superintendent has an award that he would like to announce.
So tonight, you know, a theme that we could trace across all of these student awards that we've given tonight is a concept that we're increasingly calling agency. And that is students doing authentic work, leading their own learning, taking responsibility for their own learning. And what we have discovered here is that as we do that, we are often incredibly surprised and inspired by the work that our students do. I think there's a notion sometimes out there in the world that kids aren't what they used to be. And in fact, that's true. What I find is that they're better. They're smarter, they're more socially aware, they're hardworking, they lean into the work, and they're able to really create a lot of their own work. So that's a theme that we're working on in this district. You hear terms like inquiry that the principals are using, and that's an intentional term where we're really trying to apply neuroscience actually to how we teach and learn. And neuroscience is really, if your brain's doing the work, you're a more powerful learner. So the next group of young ladies that I would like to recognize tonight is led by our coach, who I think was just out of high school when she started this journey 11 years ago. Coach Graney was an assistant coach for 3 years, and then for the last 8 years has been our head coach for the Maine South Hawkettes, who just recently won the large national high kick division championships. This is not the first time they've won the national championships. They've been to the nationals every year since I've been here, and probably every year for a zillion years. But to win the national championships at the very highest level is indicative of just the incredible hard work. So just one quick story about the Hawkettes. My office used to be next door over at Maine South, and after a lot of days after work or in between work, I would go down the back hallway, go to the fitness center, work out. And almost every day, and I mean year-round, there would be a group of Hawkette dancers in there, often working by themselves, just simply one leading practice, working on technique, older girls coaching the younger girls, and you talk about agency and authentic work. I have always been incredibly impressed by the culture within the Hawkettes, which is about the leaders on the team really passing down the work ethic. It really starts with Coach Graney, who herself is a very accomplished dancer. And so that I'm just so honored and so pleased to recognize our Hawkettes tonight. They really carry along this theme, and they're literally, folks, is no substitute for following your passion and for hard work. There's a lot of things that test scores don't tell us, but the passion and the hard work at the end of the day probably makes as much difference as anything. So tonight we're going to honor Coach Jackie Graney, head coach of the Maine South Hawkettes, for winning the national championship. And Jackie's got some lists, but let's give them a round of applause. Say one quick word. Paula has a very passionate, vested interest in the Hawkettes as well.
As a mother of 3 alumni daughters who danced for the Hawkettes, I have a personal insight into this wonderful group, and especially this outstanding coach. We've been part of the program for 10 years. Now moved on to water polo, so but I just wanted to talk about the character and excellence of Coach Graney and all the team, but really Coach Graney off the dance floor, and that what she's instilled in all the dancers and the alumni, that she has an incredible following because we've been such an incredible role model. Not only is it team sportsmanship, excellence, respect, grades, work hard. The cumulative GPA of this team for the last 10 years has been wavered between 3.8 and 3.9, but also a commitment to the community service. I could not believe when I first started how much this team gives to the community and how important it is in this, the character building and the respect that it has been really from you, Jackie, has been the cornerstone of the Hawkettes, and I think that's why you excel not only on the dance floor but off the dance floor. And it's an honor to have been part of the program. Thank you for your excellence, all of you, but especially thank you, Coach Graney, for your excellence in being such a role model for our children, our grown women.
Thank you, Dr. Wallace and Mr. Mesmer and Ms. Bessler. I am here with my captains and seniors, our upperclassmen, Isabel, Katie, Jackie, Natalia, Megan, Linnea, Bridget, and Maggie. and they led the team the past 4 years and brought us this championship home this year. So we're very excited and honored to bring it back to Park Ridge. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a superintendent's award.
You know what, you guys should hold up that big trophy.
Yeah.
Where is that big trophy?
It's right here.
You see that big trophy? Holy cow. Here, I'll stand. You didn't do to this trophy what the football players did with theirs and treat it like the Stanley Cup. Okay.
And the girl has the trophy. Go for the picture. Go for the picture, girls.
Do you guys want to get a picture?
Sure.
The girls get in it?
Come on.
Yeah, go on this side.
Let me get that.
Big smile to everyone. One. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
This is an opportunity for all of our awarded students tonight and their families to go ahead outside and have a photo taken with their principals. It's also an opportunity for you to escape the meeting should you like to do so while we move on to business. Thank you.
Okay, if she wants it, if not, we'll bring it in. She's okay.
There are no clear.
Okay. Do you have an update, Ken?
I have a couple of updates, just and he's not in here, but wanted to just announce that we're making a recommendation this evening to hire Sean Vesper to replace our own Dr. Bob Gerbaga as the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Innovation. We changed the title a little bit. Barbara's been so innovative that we finally have brought the title up to her work, just as she's leaving. But we had a nice pool of candidates and conducted a couple rounds of interviews, and at the end of the day, we felt like Sean was the right choice. He has already begun trying to get as much time as he can with Barb to make sure that he's up to speed. And the nice thing is the way that we're working in terms of instructional team right now, probably the most integrated work that we've done. So Sean has been intimately involved with all of that, and that recommendation will come to you afterwards. And I'm happy to keep Sean in closed session if the board would like to have a conversation prior to coming out of closed and making the recommendation to hire him. The second thing is, I just want to give the board a heads up on this. I've been selected to be part of a national cohort for the Redefining Ready initiative from the AASA, which is the National Superintendents Association. They're forming a cohort of interested superintendents to see if we can work on getting more national traction on the Redefining Ready. I'll remind the board that last year we were one of the first districts in the country to adopt a resolution in support of Redefining Ready. I think we were 4th or 5th, and probably by this time next year there'll be 400 or 500 or more, probably 4,000 districts across the country that will have done similar resolutions. So I'll keep you updated on that. We have our first meeting in April over at 214 with Dave Schuler, and so that is all of my updates.
What would be a principal?
Jim, can you start? June 1, it's you. You're the new principal. I forgot to tell you. Actually, we got the ad up. When did we get it up? Thursday or Friday? So we already have about 10 people who have applied for it. So we will advertise it, and unfortunately, we're going to be a little bit slow just because we've got spring break coming up here in a couple of weeks. So my intent was to try to get someone at the April board meeting and bring a recommendation. We may not make the April board meeting, so we'll have to make a decision. Do we want to do a special board meeting between April and May board meeting, or bring it to the May board meeting? it depends on if it's an internal or an external candidate. So we have the ad up, we got right on that.
Okay, are there any updates from board members? Yes.
I was a guest at the Maine West Fine Arts play 2 weeks ago, and just couldn't get over the voices and the music. These were high school students, shocked the heck out of me. And then the second thing is when I was walking out, I saw our own Dr. Klein, and he brought his daughter and a friend. So it was a great play. It was real fun. I mean, they all are, but I got to see this one.
Anyone else? Okay, so we have a buildings and grounds committee update.
Yeah, I'll talk to that. We met on February 27th, and we brought, a number of bids were brought to us for board approval, and the following: trash enclosure, gym floor finishing, asbestos abatement, boiler replacement projects, tennis court improvements, parking lot improvements, elevator modernization. And as a committee, we recommend to the board that they all be accepted. And then we also talked about the facility master plan and how some thoughts about going forward with that. So that'll be coming up. Mary will probably talk to that in the future. And then we adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And tonight, we've got several of those bids up for adoption tonight that were recommended out of the bid.
And we are seeing a lot of competitive bids, which is a good news to know. But at the same time, I guess our budget is somewhat slightly under than their estimates too. And that's what will we be able to calculate the cost wise?
Yeah. I'll let Mary speak to that if she wishes.
We can talk about that. Okay.
We talked about that separately, don't we?
Okay. Mary, we'll move on to monthly status of finances.
In your board packet is the January financial statements. About on the revenue side, the only thing, as we talked about with the second quarter update, is what's going to happen with state funding. Currently, the state hasn't paid any of the quarterly mandated categorical special ed payments, so they're behind in their payments by about $2 million. So we'll see what happens towards the end of the year. On the expenditure side, the expenditures aren't in line with both budget and previous years. So I will entertain any questions that anybody has on the January financial statements.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay. Thank you, Mary. Any kind of sense of what's happening in Springfield? In the nutshell.
Lots of discussions
Nothing
and
happened.
nothing happens. Lots of discussions and nothing happens, which is probably good news for us, because I think when something happens, it'll be bad news for us.
If those of you who were at Enred, if you remember Will Davis on the panel saying he would not be surprised if it isn't until next fall before something ultimately gets done, I don't think that's the worst prediction on this. Here's the good news, is I think they have a good sense of what the puzzle pieces are. They just need to trim the edges a little bit to make sure that they can all fit together, because they've structured this to be a bunch of moving parts that have to fit together. It's sort of an all or nothing.
And John, I think I'm encouraged by what I've seen them study. I mean, they've put a lot of work into studying things for the grand bargain and all of these things. I mean, there's been a lot of facts brought up, a lot of real hardcore analysis done. I'm not saying there's no politics involved, but it's still much, I would say, further advanced than it was a year ago. I mean, with facts, so that's a good thing.
Progress, slow.
Yeah, well, it's very slow.
Very painful. Okay. Anything else? Instructional services, Barb?
This is just our short typical report at this time of the year, listing our national merit finalists. We have 11 for this year. They're itemized for you by name and number on the second page of the report. And with some reminders about the contest.
Are any of the Schuler students national merit in the past?
I I'm sure they have been, but I'm not sure.
I see there's none this year.
Kind of just depends on the individual student and how much time they put into the PSAT and that sort of thing. So in the past, I think we've been wearing your shoes.
I think one of the things, Mary, that's gonna happen moving forward, now that we've got the whole SAT suite and all the kids are taking the PSAT, we're gonna have I think this number's gonna grow for us, because it used to be we sort of hand-selected the kids to take the PSAT, and I'm certain that in every building, we miss kids who would have done really well on that. And now with all of them taking it, we'll increase the numbers, I think.
Ken, do we have an update on FOIA requests?
3 this month, and they've each either been processed or are being processed.
Could I have a motion on item 7, consent agenda?
Move 7A through E.
Okay. Jimmy, would you please take the roll?
Bessler? Childers? Collins? Lee? McGrath? Sullivan? Owen?
Aye. Could I have a motion on item 8, resolution adopting local government travel expenses? Okay. This, I believe, is this the first time we're adopting it like this?
In response to the law.
Let's go ahead and talk about it a little bit.
Is this different from the policy?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
It's a required part of it.
Okay.
Well, Governor Rauner passed the Local Government Travel Expense Control Act a while back, which requires school districts now to set a limit for the amount of money that school board members and employees can spend for travel expenses and meals and lodging and registration fees. And so they didn't put any dollar figures on there. It's up to each individual school district to set those limits. However, in the future, if any employees or school board members were to go over those limits, then those would have to be approved by a majority roll call vote by the Board of Education. It's all about transparency in expending funds for travel purposes.
You said there were no figures, but what about the 5 and the 225?
There were no figures that the state law set for us.
You put this in.
These are our figures based on what similar situated districts that in our area that we study were doing.
And also our budget, right? We have a budget.
Correct. Yeah.
What is that budget amount?
$225,000.
So we're ready right up to the budget.
Well, for employees, and then we've got a separate budget for
I would question putting a dollar amount in the actual policy as opposed to putting an amount as approved annually by the board.
That was one of my questions.
Yeah, and our policy, you will not see any numbers in our policies. And this is a resolution that has to be annually approved by the board. And so each year we can set the limits or keep the same ones. But
So we have to do this every
it's in this annual resolution
Okay.
from now on, but you won't see the numbers in policy.
Okay,
And
that's
we'll
fine.
do it, the plan is to do the resolution in 10 with the budget adoption.
Yeah.
But this number that I'm seeing, the 225, that covers everyone in the
That's
district,
the
including
employees.
board.
No, those are employees. The 5,000, I believe,
That's per event.
per individual board member.
But it says district employees is the 225, so that we're not employees.
Okay, so
The
If I
225.
am,
the
I'm
225 is for the employees and the 5,000 is for individual board members.
Yes.
And that's, you know, we're basing that 5,000 on,
Historical experience, if we would go over, and we have not spent a lot of money for board travel. The biggest items are when board members go to the National School Board Conference, and they're well below the 5,000 limit. What the law requires is that if you exceed the amount that's set here, that you have to go back to the board and approve that. So we wanted to set an amount that we were comfortable we would not be ever exceeded.
It does say that whereas all board member expenses must be approved by a roll call vote in an open meeting of the board, so even if it's under 5,000.
Even if it's under,
Okay.
yeah. So when we get the budget for like the travel, we'll come back and approve those individually.
all right? Any other questions on this? Okay. Jim, would you take a roll?
Sullivan? Bessler? Lee? Childers? McGrath? Collins?
Aye.
Owen?
Aye. Okay, could I have a motion on Item 9, this is the second reading for a number of policies and procedures.
Move 9A through G.
Second it.
Did this change, something about $10 if meals are provided? I don't remember us discussing that in the policy meeting.
Which one, I'm sorry, which one are we?
Yes, yes, we did actually. This has not been changed. This is what our committee looked at. So we kept it at the $50 per day.
Right.
However, we added the meal allowance would be reduced $10 if that meal is part of a registration fee. For example,
Right.
if your registration fee covers your lunch for that day, then you have $40 for dinner then.
And this was discussed at the meeting.
Yes. Yes.
Do you have any other? Okay, just want to make sure you. I had a question on, I'm not going to remember the number now.
220.
Yes, okay.
It's not one of the policies that you see here, it's in the large packet. I can't remember now what the corollary number was.
Yeah.
2-2:20 is the new number.
Okay, but this is the one on, tell me which one you remember, because I had a little conversation about it.
This is one of the 1000 series, it's about board member duties and powers.
Yes, okay.
And one of the bullet points in the recommended policy from the Illinois Association of School Boards stated that board members have the authority to hire the superintendent and make staffing decisions and various other things in there. And I think it was staffing decisions was the term that might have been, or was it something else?
Making employment decisions.
Yeah, and so what I did is I went back to the press policy, and press, you know how they're good at footnotes? The press policy footnotes for that bullet kind of expanded on those definitions, and one of the things that they included in the footnote was making reduction in force decisions. So I think that phrase that you were looking at, in their mind, meant making reduction in force decisions, which is an annual thing that the board votes on each year.
We've retained another policy. I mean, I just want to give you an idea. This was a question that came up for me a little bit earlier. I was under the impression that generally hiring recommendations would come from Ken on most.
Well, and actually, administratively, so actually the bulk of the hiring recommendations come from the buildings. So, for example, if I'm an English chair, I get together with English chairs and the principals, and they make recommendations on our teachers or deans or anything like that. I normally make recommendations on cabinet members. But in general, the recommendations come from staff.
We're not involved, the language that was here says the board is making employment decisions. We are approving recommendations. It was confusing to me because we're not part of the interview process normally. We just don't get involved in that. I wanted some clarification. There is another policy that we've retained, that again, I can't, it's hard for me to pull it up here, but that goes over that, and I thought it clarified that.
Yeah, and then like I said, when I read through the footnotes, employment decisions, the Illinois Association of School Board correlated with reduction in force decisions, and determinations each year. But we could alter that language to make it more clear if you'd like.
Well, because by state statute, we approve hiring, but like you just said, we're not involved in the interview process at all.
I think you might be able to change it instead of saying making, you would say staffing decisions.
It says employment decisions.
Employment decisions to maybe making employment recommendation approvals or something like that.
That's more clear, and that's actually consistent with what actually does happen.
Well, and like I said, the other provision, which I think it was 227 or something, was clear. It was our old language, and it seems clearer. Comes as a recommendation and then we approve, or not approve. That's our involvement in that, so.
But ultimately, we are making the decision.
We are.
Yes.
Yeah, so
I would leave it as.
I'm okay with leaving it as long as as we understand, everyone here kind of understands that. Okay, I had one other question, it's kind of a technical one, but one of the policies says that the technical name of our board is the,
Township High School District.
yes,
Yeah.
without the main in it.
Correct.
Is that correct? And we have to stay with that?
Well, and there's some history to this.
I mean, anyone who's run, and we've all run.
I'm seeing a backstory here.
Well, I just know that that's what the official title is on.
It's like the Illinois State Board of Ed has that as our official title. No one ever uses it.
We all run, when you run for this office,
Well,
you do
and
not
no-
run under that.
And
so-
if you use that term, nobody would know what you were talking about, unfortunately. It's one of those things that,
We're not gonna change because we.
Well, they know 207.
Technically, a township high school district can exceed a township's boundaries.
and we do.
So that's why legally their name is
Is not
Township
named.
High School District 207.
Yeah.
It just happens to be that people know us as Main Township, but legally we're 207.
Okay, I think that's it. That answers it. Okay. Does anybody have any other questions on any of these policies? I just want to say again, great work. I think it's a great step in, getting us up to date with footnotes if we have questions on policies and good guidance. So thank you to the committee and Greg for all the hard work on this.
And real quick, I did get one of the questions was related to a disclaimer regarding the legal references. And the disclaimer that was suggested by one of our policy committee members was basically given the stamp of approval, not only by our law firm, but the attorneys from the Illinois Association of School Boards. So thanks, Sean, for that free legal advice.
And to be clear, Sean was not practicing law.
Nor getting compensated for it.
Two other attorneys like, so.
Good, that's great. Okay, well, we'd like to hear that.
And before we close, I would like to thank Greg for the tremendous amount of work that he did on this. We kind of worked with him and, tightened the scope up a little bit. We are not covering all of the policies this year because when we got past the 4,000 series, it seemed apparent that the rest of them were more outside of the policy committee's area of specialty. We needed education and finance to get in there and, approve the change to the press policies as appropriate in their areas. So this really wraps up the work for the policy committee. With, Greg and the rest of the staff's tremendous assistance. I think will obviously be interesting numbering for a little while we get to the other policies, but I think it moves us forward in the areas that have been most neglected over the years.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of work left to be done, and I'll spearhead all that and then funnel the stuff to Mary for the finance committee. What I'm finding, the nice thing about a lot of the policies in finance, a lot of them were redone in 2011, so they're real up to date. So there's not too many changes there, and then we'll be doing the same thing regarding the student ones.
I think there were some references in these policies saying, once finance was done, this policy would have to be looked at again. There were a couple of those situations.
I think it was more for cross-references than
Cross-references,
anything else.
Yeah.
Okay.
Once they renumber all the finance ones.
And then as far as this, once it's, I'm assuming it will be adopted, then we will get this up on the website.
Absolutely.
Okay. And eventually on board docs too, if poor Jimmy can do that, but they'll go on board docs too. For board members, that is a great place if you want to find the policies. You can actually search by a term in board docs. So if you're looking for something, you're not sure where it is, you can search a term. I don't think we can do that on our website, but.
Not as easy.
Right. Okay. There's nothing else? Any would you take the roll? McGrath. Aye.
Sullivan. Childers. Bessler. Collins. Lee. Owen.
Aye. That's great. Okay, could I have a motion on item 10? Approval of bids and awarding of contracts. Okay, so, all right, so let's start with, I don't know if you see that, Ms. Mayor, you want to go one?
You want me to do a brief statement on each? Okay. The first bid was for trash enclosure for the Administration Center and Frost Academy, and we received 5 bids on that. We're recommending the low bidder to G. Fisher Commercial Construction in the amount of $17,850.
Was there no trash enclosure before?
There is a trash enclosure. It is adjacent to the school, and one of our classrooms looks over it. And it is not large enough to also do recycling. So we're relocating it to the northeast corner of the parking lot, doubling it inside so that we can have both trash and recycling.
It blocks one of the school windows, both windows.
It didn't
one of the
matter when
classrooms.
that trade organization was here.
Yeah, didn't matter then, but now it's a classroom.
The second is for partial replacement of the standing seam roof of the auditorium. It is currently a copper seamed roof, and we were replacing it with a tin steel alloy. We received 5 bids for that project, so bids range from $55,000 to $88,000. We are recommending awarding the contract to Knickerbocker Roofing in the amount of $55,000. The next one is for the Main West roof, even though it says south, it's west. And there's 2 projects for the Main West roof. The first project is to replace a portion of the standing roof, and that, we received 6 bids for that project. They range from $169,880 to $297,000. We are recommending awarding to the low bidder National Roofing in the amount of $169,880. The second roofing project at West, and we're going to put a liquid membrane above the dome, which is the center of Main West, also then has a roof dome. And that's a liquid membrane. Our bids range from $75,960 to $180,250. The low bidder, Ridderford Roofing, withdrew their bid, so we are recommending awarding it to the second low bidder, that is National Roofing, in the amount of $99,680. We are also bid the gym floor refinishing at Main West. It's sanding, stripping, repainting, relining. We received 1 bid, and that didn't concern us because the bid was for $52,900. We had budgeted the project at $75,000. What happened was during the pre-bid meeting, multiple companies saw who was gonna bid and knew that the low bidder was gonna outbid them in terms of price, because that was what they frequently happen. So we only received 1 bid, and therefore we're recommending awarding to Top Performance in the amount of $52,900. The next bid was for the asbestos removal at Main South in tandem with the boiler replacement. We received 11 bids for the asbestos removal at Main South. The bids range from $104,000 to $398,000. The low bidder, Hussar Abatement, withdrew their bid because they missed scope. That was discovered during the scope review. We are recommending awarding to the second low bidder, Hallian, in the amount of $188,488. For Main West, we also have asbestos abatement related to the boilers. We received 11 bids for that project. The low bidder, Hussar, withdrew their bid because they missed scope on that project as well. That came out during scope review. So we are recommending awarding the low bid, Hallian, in $189,000. And we are also recommending the award of an alternate in the amount of $15,000. That's not in my memo, but I know that from memory.
Is the total 189 area?
The total is 189, the bid is 174, and.
Okay, that's what's in front of us, sorry,
Yes.
not in front.
The next bid was for the boiler replacement at Main South. We had 10 bids. The bids ranged from $1,985,000 to $3,843,000. The low bidder, Hayes, did not acknowledge them to, and they've requested to have their bid withdrawn because they missed scope. The second low bidder, C. Acetali Heating, requested to have their bid withdrawn because they missed scope. The third low bidder, Monaco Mechanical, and keep in mind the Main South boiler project was opened on Thursday, Main West was opened on Friday. Asked to have their bid withdrawn because the next day, knowing that they were not low at South, they bid aggressively at West, were the low bidder at West, did not feel it was in the best interest of the district to be doing both South and West. We agreed, and they withdrew their bid. Meaning we moved to the fourth low bidder, which is Boris Mechanical, and their bid was $2,942,000, but we are awarding 2 alternates, bringing their total bid amount to award to $2,959,170. This is below the budget, which is $3.4 million. So you could see that some of the bids ranged above the bid, but there were so many bids and the bids were so aggressive that we are still under budget on that project. At Maine West, we received 8 bids. The bids ranged from $4,036,000 to $5,887,706. There was phase 1 and phase 2. So multiple bidders dropped out because one bidder missed scope. Another bidder put phase 2 work in phase 1, and then when they were low on phase 2, they realized that they couldn't do everything, so they asked to have their bid withdrawn. Monaco was then the low bidder, and they were low for phase 1 and phase 2. So we are recommending awarding them a base bid of $336,000, $5,336,000, but we are also adding 4 alternates, and we bid alternates to get pricing and see if the pricing is favorable to the district. And then if the pricing is favorable, we have the opportunity to accept or not award the alternates. And in this instance, these 4 alternates for fencing, air conditioning and dehumidification of the lower level, removal and abandoning of a stack on top of the roof and patching the roof, and completely overhauling the 30-year-old cooling tower, were very favorable in pricing. That brings their total bid contract amount to $5,439,000.
All of that's Monaco.
All of that's Monaco. On the tennis courts, we had 0 bidders. They do not feel that they could do 2 schools during one summer. So that project for tennis courts is being rebid. While Maine East tennis courts are in slightly worse conditions, we are doing Maine South because Maine South is hosting a major tennis tournament next year. So Maine West will get them. Our plan is to come back and then summer of 18 do Maine East. Maine South, we decided not to do a couple months ago because their repair needed at South is way more intensive and has to be completely redesigned.
And that's not even an item.
That's not even an item. So there is no action on tennis courts tonight.
Even though there's the tournament, you were gonna do South instead of.
It's still,
You're not doing anything.
we had no bidders, so we're rebidding. Once those bids are opened in April, we'll have probably a recommendation for a bid award. So
And you're saying for South because they're having a tournament?
for Maine West, because they're having a tournament.
Oh, I thought I heard you say South.
She did say South.
She meant South, you're right.
South is out altogether.
South is completely gone. Yeah. Parking lot, we are doing parking lot improvements at Maine South and Maine West. We had 14 bid received, which for asphalt is a bid record for me. The bids range from $386,760 to $527,135. We are recommending awarding to the low bidder, All Star Asphalt, in the amount of $386,760. Because we combined both schools in during these projects, we were able to get several asphalt contractors that own their own asphalt plants. And that is reflected in the favorable pricing that we received.
Mary, quick question on that. How long do you anticipate this kind of parking lot improvement to last?
Seal coating will last, so it depends. Resurfacing should last 10-ish years, 12-ish years, depends on water penetration, salt. You could go longer, as I've seen them last as high as 20. Seal coating is a couple of years, because that's just and it's the seal coating that allows the resurfacing of the asphalt to go longer, because it's a protected layer.
Can I jump in on this one real quick?
Sure.
This was a pretty neat process at West because they allowed our civil engineering and architecture students to sit in on the silent bidding. And the architects are using 3 of the designs from the civil engineering class for the parking lot. So they came back and presented to the kids, and then the kids got to see the bids.
And the kids will continue to follow that project through to the end. The last bid was for the elevator modernization at Main West. We received 2 bids. Bids ranged from $115,000 to $135,000. We are recommending awarding the bid to Cali Elevator in the amount of $115,809, plus there's an alternate, correct? Because I don't have the full packet. For their, so the recommendation on board docs is correct. I just can't remember if it's $115,809.
It says it in the agenda.
Let me just see. Then it says there's an alternate bid for fence enclosure of 10,000, is that included in that?
That is not included because we are not taking it, so that's why it's $115,809.
Okay, so we did not include,
And that's it. The elevator, on the elevator project, it was over budget, but that's because we're doing such a complete overhaul that you have to bring the elevator up to the current standards.
Oh, they're small elevators.
Yeah, so.
Let me just clarify, is it 115? Is that the?
115,
809. With the alternate?
With the alternate.
Okay.
What's the total amount of everything?
The total amount that we are awarding is $9,619,828. We had budgeted, bless you, for that for all of those projects, $11,294,625, which means that currently our bids are about $1.7 million under what we had anticipated.
But it's up capital improvements.
Correct.
And that does not include what we budgeted for the.
No, that is only award, what is recommended for award. So there is additional money and budgets for the projects that we have not looked at yet.
So just on these?
Just
the
on these.
budget and the actual?
Yes.
Difference of 1.7.
Yes. To the good.
Or not? Okay.
So there we've been seeing that very competitive bids overall compared to any other bid contract opportunities. So I think that's kind of good news to get nice price comparison, especially this kind of hard tool. But are we personally do all the marketing and outreaching for all those contractors on the list, on the file, or do we go extra miles to hire someone to go out for these particular projects?
So what we do is all architects have a pre-qualified list of bidders that they send bids to, and we also publish in the newspaper and put the notices on the website. And then what happens is most companies subscribe to a service that scans all of the newspapers and finds all the bidding projects and give them a summary of all the projects to bid. So it's a combination of both public information and outreach from the architects.
Is there any other possible opportunity for our district to move forward to extend our hands on opportunity for new contractors, who's qualified contractors, to kind of get involved and really get to know the district and, maybe opportunity to participate in the biddings, as I mentioned before too?
A number of these contractors are contractors that have successfully performed projects for the district in the past. So you'll see Horace Mechanical did work for us last summer. Hollian, the asbestos abatement company, has done work for us. Cali Elevator currently performs the maintenance on our elevators. A number of the roofing vendors have done roofing projects because we're doing roofs just about every year. So there are a lot of familiar names on this list. I think where we saw the most new amounts of companies were on the boilers, and that's because of sheer size. because of the size of the boilers, were some major players that bid on this project, where a major player might not bid on a $75,000 HVAC project. And the asphalt, because of the size and the combining of the two schools, there were some major players on the asphalt side that we saw come in.
What do you mean we do something on roofs every year?
We basically replace a roof somewhere every single year in this district.
Or a portion?
Or a portion, because our roofs are done in sections, and we have probably between 8 and 10 sections of roof on each school. So that's 30 sections of roofs. Roofs last 20 years, so you're doing roofs every year.
So the roof at Main West that.
Not that same roof, but there are portions. So like last year, I think
So
we
my
did.
question is, I had the impression it was the entire roof. You're
No.
telling me it's only a section.
It is only a section of roofing. So our roof, we have a roofing grid that lays out each section of roofing. So there is a section of roofing that we are doing that butts up to the dome, butts up to the auditorium, and Seaway. So there's a section of roofing there. You could never, in a summer, do the volume of roofs that it would take to do on any one of our schools, nor would you want to, because then if you had a catastrophic roof failure, it would impact your entire building.
We've got 1.5 million square feet of space under roofs, so it's in terms of scale and scope, it's big.
I just never thought of it that way. And of course, you see all that space, but it's
Yeah.
like you did the
So,
roof.
so even the auditorium roof that we're replacing at South, we are only doing the eastern portion. No, the eastern portion of that whole entire section, because that is the only portion that is failing.
Patchwork.
Yeah.
And again, we are not really obligated to hire a minority woman-owned business contractors throughout.
We are specifically excluded by Illinois law. Illinois law says that you must award to the lowest responsible bidder. Therefore, you saw that a vendor that misses scope is no longer considered responsible. A vendor that misses an addendum is no longer responsible. But from there, you are not allowed to consider minority status, locally owned, or anything. It must go to the lowest bidder after they meet the responsible criteria.
It's $9-10 million is a huge project of construction in general. So something related to, but is there anywhere that we have considered providing opportunity for minority and women-owned business and local business contractors? Somehow we can able to encourage them to participate and help them out.
You know, and I know this is a continuing topic. We have hosted, I mean, at your suggestion when you first got on board, we actually hosted an event. We had one vendor show up. The vendors that are in this space that do this work, they are following us and all the school districts on a regular basis. And when bids come out, I mean, they're bidding on those things. I don't know how to bridge that.
And quite frankly, until after, as part of the contract process, we send out a letter asking them to indicate whether they're a minority, business owned or local. So we don't know, as we award these contracts, the answer to that question, because those questions are not asked for bids until after the bid is awarded. And then we track that information and produce a report for the Illinois State Board of Education once a year.
Benita, that makes a lot of sense. If you aren't allowed to consider those factors, to collect that information in advance could be seen as an unintentional bias, and could lead to questioning whether or not we're following the law. So, while it's a laudable goal, we must follow the law.
Okay, are there any other questions?
I just want to clarify, because I was not able to attend the building and grounds meeting last week. Are there any of these bids that there were any controversy over, or?
I would say the controversies, like, let's use the Main South boiler bid, for example. When we opened a bid that was less than $2 million, everybody in the room knew something was wrong with that bid. And it became a joke where they're like, we're gonna go back to them and act, because we knew, and what we didn't know until the next day was if Hayes was going to pull their bid, ask for a withdrawal, or if they were gonna tell us that that bid was a good number. So we've been fortunate that any of the controversy in the bids came out during scope review. Those contractors recognized the mistakes that they made, asked to have their bids withdrawn, which we honored.
And we still had enough bids in those cases where we.
Absolutely.
We still had a number that.
Correct.
Even after they withdrawn.
Mhm. So, and the contractors that are here are solid contractors that have gone through scope review.
And there was that one, item where there was only one bidder. and
Correct.
Did either member of the committee that were able to attend have any concern that Sylvia did a slightly deeper dive than we're
Oh,
doing
yeah,
here?
we did a much deeper dive. It was an hour-long meeting, we went through them all. Obviously, it's a concern when you get before the lowest bid, but there was a good rationale for getting there, and it was still underneath budget amounts. So with that, they all moved forward.
And I think on that floor, because I remember I was at the meeting, I did ask about the reputation of that particular contractor, and they are reputable. And in fact, I think that's why the other ones didn't put a bid in, because they kind of knew that they couldn't.
And on the construction budget wise, are we also in good hand, ready to?
Yeah, I mean, we have.
We're 1.7
That's the one
million
we're
under
Mhm.
what we had anticipated the budget would be, so that's for these projects.
Okay. And these projects, just refresh my memory, these projects were identified as a part of our master plan and what we designated for what we needed in 2017?
Correct, these projects were identified, most of them were identified in the plan, so we go through a process where we review the master plan and the projects we have left, plus what's going on in our buildings, to come up with a capital projects list that we provide in November and get board approval then to start working on the bid documents.
Were there any new additional from the master plan that we explored or completed with?
Like the
Instead of, in lieu of in plan funds? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Can you tell us?
So I can tell you that initially, like in the 10-year facility plan, the boiler replacements were in different years. What we decided was economies of scale, similar programming, that it was probably best to do both of them instead of doing one this year, one next year. The roofs are one where while we've scheduled the roofs out in the 10-year facility master plan, every year, both spring and fall, we walk the roofs to see, a roof that we thought may have been able to go 3 years, could have really not had a good winter. So they move to the top of the list, and a roof that we thought we were gonna replace maybe moves to the bottom.
So because we're now doing double boilers and we're doing additional roofing than we thought, are there any projects that we had slated this year that we are no longer doing, or did not look at?
From the original plan, I mean, without looking, the answer is yes, because it happens every single year. We take a look, we start at the facility master plan and we start to say, okay, this is what we thought we were gonna do. Some items got moved up and we did sooner, some items got pushed back. What those individual items are, I wouldn't be able to tell you off the top of my head.
I don't.
But that's kind of the process we use.
Do any stand out to you?
No, there are none. To me, my concern has been for the last several years, these boilers. Because this is a
We've pushed them as far as
huge-
we can go.
And I know that from when I was on.
Yeah.
Well, and the good news is we're gonna be able to hopefully replace them now, get them working and not have a situation which we've been dodging for several years where in the middle of winter, one or more of them just fails. Because we're 20 years beyond the lifespan of some of our boilers, 20 plus years.
And we'll use a good example at West. At West, when summer ended and we walked the asphalts, it was C-Lot versus Front Drive. Over winter, now C-Lot's in slightly better condition than the Circle Drive, but we already made a decision based on the condition at that point, which one. So I would not be surprised if next summer there's a recommendation to do the Front Drive at Maine West. Because, you know, and I think roofs and asphalts are probably the two biggest areas where things can change over a winter.
I just couldn't recall when I was asking if anything got knocked off the list because we moved up the boiler.
No.
So it doesn't seem like anything's staying.
We're doing more projects this summer than normal. We traditionally do 5 million. We're doing now, we thought it would be 13, but it looks like it'll be closer to 11.
So with all the bids that we've been receiving, what's the timeline, basically what the summer, after summer
Basically the
vacation?
summer, there are certain projects that will start earlier, like the asbestos abatement, because it's a self-contained room with an exterior exit, can start a little bit sooner. But certainly like roofs and asphalt, that will wait until students are out. And then we work with the contractors starting tomorrow to come up with a complete schedule of the project.
So we should be able to complete these projects by end of the summer?
Yeah, so like the boilers will not be done by the end of the summer. The boilers themselves will be done by the time we need the heat. Then once the heat switches on, let's use Maine West, the heat switches on, the air conditioning switches off, then once the air conditioning's off, they will rebuild the chiller, because that chiller is what air conditions the building. So they will not be completely done with that project until probably about this time next year.
Okay, good question.
So everything is on control?
Everything is in this.
Budget-wise?
Budget-wise,
labor-wise,
contractor-wise.
timing-wise?
Right, okay. There's no further questions. Ginny, would you please call the roll?
Collins?
Aye.
McGrath?
Aye.
Bessler? Sullivan?
I'm going to abstain on I and J, but I'll vote aye on all others.
Lee?
Aye.
Childers?
Aye.
Owen?
Aye. Okay. Could I have a motion on item 11, intergovernmental agreement for shared vision and O&M services?
So moved.
Second.
Barb, you want to just briefly?
Sure. This time of year, we asked the board to approve an intergovernmental agreement with District 62 and 64 to provide services for our students who require vision therapy and orientation and mobility services. The contract is laid out for you there, and our share of it is 1.7 FTE out of 3 vision therapists that will be hired. And this is a typical agreement.
Why isn't District 63 involved in that?
There is not. When we used to have a special ed co-op that all 4 of the districts belonged to. We exited that 7 years ago maybe. And this was the one agreement we were able to shape coming out of it. It wasn't a really extensive co-op. 63 just felt that it could do its own absent being in this intergovernmental agreement. It wasn't because they weren't invited or couldn't have been part of it. They just chose not to.
There's no other questions. Ginny, would you please call the roll?
Bessler? Childers?
Aye.
Collins?
Aye.
Lee? McGrath?
Aye.
Sullivan? Owen?
Aye. Okay, item 12, calendar items. Does anyone have anything they want to add to this?
We have a March 27th already scheduled Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting. We are hoping, and we'll send this out Friday notes, to schedule finance right before that, because it will be a shorter meeting than Buildings and Grounds. And that way people can come out once in March.
Like 5 o'clock?
Like 5 o'clock, followed by probably 5:10.
Okay, can I ask that, is that, what day of the week is that?
Is it Monday?
I just bring the, 5 o'clock is impossible for me on a Monday.
Okay, we can go late, I mean,
Just 100%. I have to be on Arlington Heights, and I'm never out of there before 5 o'clock. So 6 o'clock works, if everybody else is unable with that, but I just really cannot.
and we can, you're on Buildings and Grounds? Yeah, so we can, what I was thinking is we can do
having those meetings at
finance at
5.
5:30, and then Buildings and Grounds at 6.
So it should be 5:36, okay.
I appreciate that, thank you very much.
So
As
buildings
we
and
shall
grounds
see.
start at 6.
And then the April 10th, we might have a meeting for personnel.
Probably won't, we don't anticipate, but we always have to keep things in placeholder.
We build it every year.
We don't, yeah, we don't.
Okay, could I have a motion, on item 14, going to closed session for the purpose
We
of?
have-
Oh.
We need to vote on this.
Oh, sorry. What are we over here?
No.
Oh, sorry. Do we have any public comments?
There are no cards.
No, okay, thank you. Now, could I have a motion to go into closed session for the purpose of review of closed session minutes, appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, and collective negotiating matters? Jim, would you take the roll?
Sullivan, McGrath, Lee, Collins, Childers, Bessler, Owen.
Aye. Okay. Do we have